Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start you off with a kind of an Atlantic basin view of infrared satellite data. So remember, when you're looking at these images, the color coding is representing the temperature measured by satellite of the top of these clouds. So the colder it is, the more intense the convection, and that'd be the brighter the colors that you see here. And what we're focusing on at the beginning of this video today is what's going on with Hurricane Lee, which continues to strengthen and has the potential to become a major hurricane very soon here over the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, following it, there is another area we're watching very carefully on the backside. It's over here. It could get the name Margot should it intensify to tropical storm status. But more than likely, Margot will stay way out to open ocean. So our questions surround where Lee is going to go, and we need to just dive again into this to see what the latest forecast information suggests. Now remember, the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone goes out 5 days. So that's what you're looking at here. So they're projecting out until Tuesday morning, a position that's still sitting somewhere north of Puerto Rico. So there's been quite a bit of consistency in this. We've seen model run to model run variations, but the National Hurricane Service's cone has pretty much been in the same location for a while. So let's kind of dig into this and see what's going on here. I want to take you out to a different view of that same data, just produced by, you can get their data. They give it a free so we can graph it ourselves. And so this is made by Tomer Berg. He is out of Oklahoma University and makes a great map because what he does is he overlays kind of faintly in the background the sea surface temperatures, and I like that. So not only does he label each of the points over which the National Hurricane Center forecasts the track, and you can see the wind speed. So at 72 hours from now, it's expected to be 155 miles an hour. This is knocking on the door here of a Cat 5 hurricane, currently Category 4 on the strength scale here, from the Saffir-Simpson scale, But you notice at the end of this, they show it weakening a little bit. And one of the reasons for that is there is a little bit of wind shear ahead of it. And you see this kind of area right up and through here looking at the ocean temperatures. This is the cold water trail from Franklin. So remember, when hurricanes go through, they churn up a lot of cold water with massive waves, and they extract heat from the ocean surface. That's actually how the hurricane works. It's a giant Carnot cycle with its heat source primarily coming from convection, coming from compressional heating in the center of the hurricane, and then extracting the water vapor off of the ocean surface. So that's why it's got this cold water trail that sits behind it like this. So there's questions as to whether or not once Lee gets over that, if there's going to be enough heat in the ocean to kind of extract. So we have to think about that. But as it stands, most models are projecting this well into Category 3 status. The black line is the National Hurricane Center forecast, getting it up here to Category 4, strong Category 4. And there are a few forecast models that are taking it up to Category 5 in its strength. But what I'm going to show you really is going to focus in on this. Now, this is from Tuesday. This was the forecast track using the European, the UK Met, so this is a British model, this is the GFS, a US model, and the CMC, a Canadian model. And what we're looking at here was Tuesday's forecast track. Now, what's nice about his website is I can go in here and I can update it with the 0Z forecast from Wednesday. And what we can watch here is a forecast trend. And that would be the forecast from 12Z yesterday. And the newest one is the 0Z forecast run from this morning. And we're looking at all of the models, so we're not just preferentially looking at one. And what we continue to see is that the forecast cone makes this hard turn to the north. Now, there's a lot of question as to whether or not this could be wrong, and it could actually get south of these troughs and maybe get over here to the East Coast somewhere. And we still cannot rule this out. And what makes this so challenging is that we are still, this right here is 8 days away. So we'll be talking about this well into next week, trying to figure out where this is going to eventually be. But we had a lot of model consensus start to turn the system farther to the north and put maybe more of Nova Scotia into play for what will likely be a transitioning to a post-tropical system with a colder core by the time it gets to this area. Now, just seeing that transition and seeing that right now, as of early in the morning on Thursday, we don't have strong evidence to tell you that there's going to be a U.S. landfall somewhere in the Carolinas or even up the East Coast just yet. I want you to know that that doesn't mean that we can't watch things continue to shift around. But what I'm going to come back to was what I started off with forecasting this week. It's the steering current. Okay, so I'm going to take you up midway into the atmosphere. I'm going to show you the latest from several models. And what we're watching here is the winds at about 5,000 meters. Okay, 5,000 meters above the surface, so 3.5 miles. And what we're out to next Monday, going into Tuesday. And so this is Lee, and this is the mid-latitude jet stream. And what we continue to talk about is the presence of this trough of lower pressure by next Thursday that's now beginning to close off over Lake Huron, but it's going to have out ahead of it some pretty strong winds. Now, anytime we talk about a low that closes off, we worry about it slowing down and therefore not progressing fast enough to be a major influence. But I think if it closes off over Lake Huron, that's close enough to the East Coast that even if it slows down, it's still going to have an influence that's going to increase the jet stream level winds here and take whatever is left of Lee and kind of pull it along. Plus, as we've been discussing, there will be an associated surface front with this. That's a formidable barrier for any tropical cyclone. So we look out there that far and we kind of see this same situation. Now, what I want to do with you here is I want to show you the ensembles, because the ensembles are attempting to take Lee and pull it into this extratropical transition and get pulled right into the back or the entrance region of that jet. See that? And that's what the concern is. That could be an intense storm system that gets pulled here, possibly toward Maine, but more likely toward Nova Scotia. Now I'm going to show it to you a couple of different ways. This is the European model solution for next Thursday morning. Let's now go show you the GFS ensemble. Very similar, okay? It's a similar position. Did you see that? There's the European. And I'll flip this back over to the GFS. Very similar. And the GFS similarly pulls this a bit farther to the north, maybe making it more in play for Nova Scotia. Now these are the ensembles. So the GFS is a 31-member ensemble. The European is a 101-member ensemble. Let's go look at the individual model runs. How about the European model first? So now you can see the tightness of that low. This is in the operational run. And it's expected to grab that and pull it right here toward, Nova Scotia. And I was just thinking about what this might look like to watch come on shore or come nearby if you were at Acadia, a beautiful national forest. If you've never been, I got to go for the first time this year. I want to go back. But this will be very important for East Coast wave action, for shipping traffic, for so many things. And then when it makes landfall, this is a powerful system coming through here. Now, that's the European model solution. Let's now go have a look at the GFS. So got a brand new GFS run that just came in. That's why that looks so weird. Let's now go take you back out there to the 00 run. There we go. So this is next Thursday night, getting into Friday. We have a very similar setup here. So this is now becoming a bit more evidence as to where we think this track is going to go. And I'm just going to take you back and show it to you again. I think there is becoming better model consensus that because of the position of a ridge here, the trough that's closing off over Lake Huron, that this will be the likely track. So what do you want to watch for? If the ridge is not here, but instead moves farther to the east, and the trough does not get here, but is instead farther, that's farther to the west toward the East Coast. And if this is farther to the west toward the Midwest, then that takes this whole track and shifts it much closer to the United States. So if you want to watch a forecast trend, if you're out there on the internet doing this yourself, that's what you watch. Those are the two biggest things I think that you can be watching. All right. So now we've seen the forecast, we've seen the trend, we see the latest information, we understand what the National Hurricane Center is predicting on this. Let's transition away from it, look at some other things going on. So I want to show you yesterday's satellite animation. This is as the sun was setting last night. So by the way, this is the remnants of Franklin still up here spinning around. Gert. Forgive me, I've kind of got all these names kind of running through my head here. But in the central United States, we had a deep low pressure system with a lot of cold air on the backside of it, big convection that rolled to the south, and a lot of smoke here. And as the sun was setting last night, some of these storms locally put down some heavy rain in some places that desperately need it. But that smoke was impressive to continue to see. And I was wanting to know how much rainfall did we get out of this over the last couple of days. So take a look. Some of these rainfall totals from some of these individual storm clusters topped 4 to 5 inches. And you can see it was broken up, but it extended all the way down here into the lower Mississippi River Valley. The farther to the south we could have brought this. I mean, this is where the truly greatest drought in the United States currently sits, in the near term, down in southern Mississippi and Louisiana. I mean, of course, it's over here throughout Texas into the plains as well. But I was just thinking about the rainfall, trying to get down there to kind of help cure some of that drought. But this has been an impressive system. And today, where you saw that smoke just a moment ago in the satellite imagery, we do still have air quality alerts that are out for parts of Colorado stretching all the way through Minnesota. Excessive heat warnings have gone back out again around Dallas and surrounding counties down here in Texas as well, as the heat's expected to continue to stay on. But the latest forecast over the next 48 hours of the smoke extent, let this reset here for you. This is now, there you go. You can continue to see that pulling through the central U.S. down into the Mid-South. And there are several areas around it where some of our forecasting models are projecting the risk of having some wildfires. You can see those kind of popping up there as those new little plumes on this animation. But the reality of it is the jet stream's doing this now. And I'll talk at the end about this massive tropical system here, but take a look at where the ridge is positioned. So what do we end up getting out of this? Well, we have one trough here, there's a trough there, there's a trough here, and that's what happens. These ridges open up, and these troughs kind of run around the periphery of them. And that's going to be where our main thunderstorm activity is going to be while this ridge sits here. Now, what we expect this map to look like with time is a further kind of squishing of the ridge down more toward Mexico and broader troughs sweeping into the east. And that's what's going to take Lee, which is what you see right here, and most likely keep it out to open ocean and eventually worry about kind of a Canadian Maritimes landfall. So let's go have a look at what we're expecting in terms of United States weather here from the high-res NAM model, the nested NAM, that 3-kilometer NAM over the day today. So notice, as the system pulls east, a lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms along the main frontal boundary. This is being aided, remember, by the flow coming over the top of that ridge, providing that one short wave that's going to sneak through parts of the southeast today. So you can see that's where our strong to severe storm threat's going to be once we get later in the day today. It's going to run along the Appalachian Mountains, clear into New England, and then on the south side, watch right here through parts of Georgia and South Carolina. Now, as we play into the overnight hours, getting into Friday, could see more clusters of storms rolling around the periphery of that ridge. This is early Friday morning, playing throughout the day on Friday. And we're going to see that short wave, this one right here, okay, make its way out by the time we get into early Saturday morning out of Montana into the plains. But as we take a look at the next 7 days kind of in total, this is what we're looking at in terms of accumulated precipitation. So we have one system exiting, Lee approaching, isolated storms in the southeast, and then we're going to watch our next major high-pressure cell dive down and on its leading edge produce these chances of getting some pretty heavy rainfall into some absolutely critical areas that are in significant drought. Now, there are going to be pockets on this next map I'm going to show you that don't reveal just how dry it's been in places. But this was what shows you at the climate reporting district since the big Texas ridge opened up at the end of June all the way until yesterday, what the precipitation ranks by climate district have looked like. And we can make an argument that there have been lately, we've shown this, right, some of the extremely dry conditions that have been throughout, the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the northern plains, all the way down through the southern plains. But I'm showing you a longer view of this, and you can see why I mentioned this area being so very dry and needing that rainfall. But it stretches through Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and also just there are pockets throughout the southern plains that have been very, very dry. Now, to kind of make a point here, I'm going to go back and show you the last 14 days percent of normal. And we're missing some data here. That's why I didn't want to show you this fully, but we're missing some data from the AHPS. But this is just to show how dry it has also been farther to the north in these areas as this crop has tried to finish up. So from here, let's go have a look at our multi-model analysis. We did this yesterday, so I want to do it again today so we can see not only Hurricane Lee, but also the timing of this next big front. So we've watched one system leave east. We expect by the weekend better chances of rain throughout the mid-Atlantic, getting up into New England. So this is some decent moisture coming in here. It's in both models. But what you're watching here is by Saturday into Sunday, this is the leading edge of a front that's on the nose of a large area of high pressure that's coming out of Canada. So as that dives down, this is next Sunday into Monday. See this? I'm really focusing more on the European here. By next Sunday into Monday, we're starting to push the heavier rain ahead of the big high pressure cell. So playing this out, you can see it sagging in there. This is Monday getting into Tuesday. And that frontal passage brings in another shot at colder air, but it also brings in better chances for delivering rain over some of the driest places in the southern plains. So we're going to watch that front continue to extend. So you can just see a lot of high pressure behind it. So it's going to push up against the Rocky Mountains. The low then leaves New England. There's the front that we have to watch that could kind of fend off Lee, which is here in the European. It's here in the GFS. So as we then play past Thursday into Friday of next week, I'm really just now looking at Lee in both of the operational runs, and they're both taking it almost to the same spot. So that will be important to watch. So now that we've kind of seen how the next 10 days are playing out, let's go ahead and have a look at the probability maps. This is the chance of getting at least an inch, highest right here in the central plains of the United States into the southern plains, almost to the Red River Valley of the South. And very wet up the East Coast. We have 2 systems rolling through here in the next 10 days. Plus Lee, whatever happens with Lee as it gets over here. But that may not be, and maybe at the very end of the 10-day time period. On the drier side of it, this is the probability of getting less than 1/2 of an inch. We see a lot of the Midwest is showing up dry. This Mid-South is showing up dry. And the West Coast is showing up dry, very dry, as well as the flow is split. We got a subtropical component and a polar component. I'll show you that at the end of this forecast video. Now, by the time we get out to day 10, I think the most important reason why this trough exists, which is the one that's going to push Lee out, all right, is because of some ridging here, ridging there, and a broad trough here. Every time this summer that we've seen deeper troughs forming in this area, there's been another one here. That backs the heat and the ridge up to the west. We continue to see that pattern play time and time again as we just think back about what this summer gave us. So what that does is that gives us a week 2 precipitation pattern that looks like this. If you have a deep trough here and it's late summer, you get drier air pulled into the back side of it. So we see drier conditions continuing throughout the Midwest. It's in both the CPC, the European, and the GFS forecast. What you're seeing here is the nose of that high pressure pushing better flow up against higher elevation in the Rockies, and just better proximity to moisture and better lift down here. So we see all along the periphery wetter conditions, and that's been a pretty robust signal for week 2 as well. That again be the 14th through the 20th. Now on the temperature side of it, the front continues to advance slowly, so temperatures here are generally 10 to 20 degrees cooler than they were a day ago. If you just look at what the temperatures are up to, this is a pretty impressive animation. So we're in the 50s in Wisconsin, 103 down here in like Austin. So there's nearly a 50-degree temperature gradient right here just from Texas to Wisconsin today, which is a bit rare in late summer. But that cooler air by Friday advances east. The heat stays on in the southern plains in Texas. Here's the next system coming in Sunday. Look at the temperatures here coming in on Sunday. And there we are on Monday. Look how cool it's going to get here in the plains. I mean, major shift in temperatures, especially like Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma. And that dives south on Tuesday into Wednesday. And as we talked about yesterday, this is going to feel amazing down here. But this is the front that's eventually going to push Lee out and keep it out, should the timing all stay the same. Now, before we get into a bit of a long-range discussion, I just want to give you the latest update on the longer-range temperatures through the next 15 days. Remember, this is a 5-day sliding window of average temperatures, so this is the next 5 days. And this is day 5 through 10. And then this plays out there day 10 through 15. So we see most of this time period heat along the west in the mountains or in Canada when you compare it to average. A lot of cooler air on the downstream side here. All right, overall, I want to show you some new model updates from the European because I feel like it's beginning to pick up on an important signal. The signal's right here. And what I'm saying here is that I believe that the MJO is finally exerting enough of an influence on the European weeklies that they're beginning to pick up on a signal that we've been thinking about when looking at historic El Nino events that have a control of the MJO and give us this. So if you look at September into October, for every year that we've had a developing El Nino, kind of like we do right now, we tended to get wetter in this area and this area. Now, the South and the Southeast are always a wild card because of tropical activity. But we started to talk about this about a month ago, that we could possibly see wetter conditions getting back into this area late in September and then into the month of October. And we're starting to get some support out of that in some of the models. Now, what we need to consider is that this is an area that as we go into harvest is extremely dry. So to get moisture into this area has kind of a good side and a bad side. The good side is it's going to come through and help relieve some of these incredibly dry soils. The bad side is we want the crop to continue to dry down in the field and not have any sort of adverse weather conditions that could affect stand quality pre-harvest. But this map we've been talking over is our latest 100 centimeter or 40-inch soil moisture maps. We've been looking at them a lot. This continues to show major soil moisture deficits on the headwaters of the Mississippi, big section of the Ohio River, and the Missouri River, all three of which funnel eventually down into New Orleans. I continually monitor what's going on in Memphis. I'm going to show you the latest data because right now at Memphis, the water level is 7 feet below low stage. And for reference, a year ago, it was 2.49 feet below low stage. Now, remember a year ago, it did drop down. By the time I got to about October 20th, that was, I think, when I saw it as the lowest, it was around 10 to 11 feet, almost 12 feet below low stage. But what you're noticing here is that over the next 10 days, we have a relatively, let's get back to it, where was it? There it is, a dry forecast over that area. So that's why I'm watching very carefully the risk we could have of later in September and October wetter conditions, because that would go a long way before these soils freeze up here once we get into late November, December. I'm talking about the northern parts of the Mississippi Basin, getting moisture back into it. So let's watch that together. Next, this is an important factor for the jet stream across North America. It is a powerful, very powerful hurricane named Jova. And where you are is you're in the Eastern Pacific. Mexico is right over here, all right? And this is stunning. I'm saving this imagery because we watched yesterday this hurricane rapidly intensify. It's Cat 5 strength and is beautiful on satellite. It's not heading toward Hawaii. It's staying out in the open ocean, but it is incredible to see nonetheless. Now, when we look at the National Hurricane Center data, so look at this, winds of 160 miles an hour, it is projected to move in this direction. Why I'm watching it carefully is the heat that exhausts out of the top of hurricanes like this can be very important to the position and strength this time of year of our subtropical jet. And as we've talked about, we continue to see these signs as we get out there into mid to late September of the jet stream behaving very much like El Nino type jet streams do in fall, with stronger winds coming out of the Middle East, leaving Japan, splitting. So some of it comes into British Columbia, but there's this subtropical component that flows like this. Now, with a pattern showing up like that, it's very hard to get a lot of heat into the atmosphere into this area. It also tends to increase along the path of the subtropical jet the best chances for storm formation. It affects the flow at this time of year, which could bring in better moisture. But that whole setup, I think, is going to be important to monitoring if we do end up getting something that could resemble a forecast like this later in September and in October. So that's why we're watching it carefully. The last thing I want to show you is this. I'm going to play the last 7 days of satellite-derived precipitation. And I want your focus down here in Rio Grande do Sul, right there. This is the southernmost state in Brazil. And as you watch, there was a tremendous amount of rainfall that fell in Rio Grande do Sul. And I've seen some just absolutely horrific videos of the flooding on Twitter. I didn't get permission to show them in my videos, so I'm not going to do that. But if you just go have a look and type in Rio Grande do Sul, it's like Rio Grande do Sul, that's Rio Grande of the South, you'll be able to see some of those videos. What I don't like is this is the new forecast. Next 10 days, that's total accumulated precipitation. Rio Grande do Sul is here. And we're now expecting another 100 to 250 millimeters of rainfall. Remember, 100 millimeters is 4 inches. So there's 4 to 8 inches more rain still in the forecast for this already flooded out region. Meanwhile, to the north, where we are allowed to plant on September 15th, most growers, we still have not built in much moisture yet into Mato Grosso, Goiás, Tocantins. There's a bit better moisture coming to Mato Grosso do Sul down to Paraná. But this whole region in through here is going to go over very cold over the next 10 days, which is going to possibly limit some of the early season field work as well. So that's what I got for you for South America. All right, I'm going to stop there. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again on Friday. Thanks.